Okay, I wanted to do a video on receipt printers. We have two of them out there. These are the two different models. This one with this logo, at least for now, they may change that, but this is the RP-330, the newer one. This one is an RP-300. The way you can tell the difference between the two is if I flip them upside down, you can see, well, let me zoom in there. Yeah, so RP-330 right there. And then on the other model, put this upside down and you can see that says RP-300. So that's how you tell the difference between the two models. And a couple other things I wanted to explain here. Let me zoom back out. All right, so sometimes, and I wanted to demonstrate this because they're having an issue with this one currently, the door will not close. You can see I can't shut it. Sometimes the opposite happens where it won't open when you hit this latch. The way to fix that is, see these two tabs here on both models? If I just basically pull that, it's tough to do this with one hand, again, as I usually do. Now that I got this piece off, I wanted to indicate that there is this small little angle piece. What's going on here is I'm going to tilt this. You can see there, I'm going to zoom in. There is a small plastic piece right there that angle piece shows. It fits with a Phillips screwdriver. So if I get that in here, you can see that fits. The reason I wanted to illustrate that is if I look at it from the front way, you can see that's my piece where I could fit my screwdriver in. And if I twist that either way, clockwise or counterclockwise, it spins that geared wheel right there. What that geared wheel does is I'm opening the top here. This one had an issue with the door not wanting to close, correct? So sometimes it'd be the opposite. Like I said, it won't want to open. What that causes that is this piece right here that has this little tooth on it, and it kind of angles down. It's like a wide V. There's the other tooth on this side. This piece prevents this door from opening or closing. But this little plastic screwdriver that I mentioned here, so I'm moving it, you can see it's popping back out. I want to retract it so that way I can get this door to close. So you can see it's slowly going back down. And then once I get it to retract all the way, then, okay, that's about as far as it'll go. Now I got a door that will close. That opens back up, no big deal. So we're back to normal. At least we didn't damage the printer. In some cases, what that will happen is after the next transaction prints, then that piece will pop back up. If that's the case, obviously we need to get this repaired or replaced, but that way there's no damage done to the printer. And at least, you know, it can be used, but it's very cumbersome. So like I said, it needs to be replaced either way. To put this back on, you can see I have the little tabs. And then that's it. It just snaps back into place. The 330, the new one, I wanted to demonstrate the same way to take that same piece off. But as you can see, this is a little different. It's not angled, and there is no plastic screw because it's not angled, but there's this little wheel. So what this is taking the place of the plastic screwdriver, and you're just spinning the gear wheel itself. So let's see if I can find it. Well, you get the idea, but what that should do is react the same way. You're just using your finger rather than a screwdriver to, there we go. I think that's popping out now. But yeah, so that piece will slowly, you can see the angle now. But yeah, now I'm gonna have the same problem with that door won't close. So I'm gonna retract this. It goes slower because you're only doing a smaller amount rather than twisting a screwdriver. So anyway, just wanted to demonstrate that. I'll put this piece back on. Yeah, I think we're all the way down here. Okay, so put that piece back on. The other thing I wanted to demonstrate once I get my screwdriver switched here. I'm going to get a flat head. But I wanted to point out one more thing. This little divoted piece here, and you can see that's just a separate piece. And then if I zoom way into the bottom here, you can see there's these little grooves that kind of make that adjustable, because that will fit in whatever groove you want it to. What this is for is to adjust the width of the roll of paper if needed. And the reason I wanted to point that out is because sometimes the paper is a little too thick and it'll get caught. So it fits, but it's a little too tight. So the reason I'm pointing this out is because this whole piece can be removed. So you got to be kind of careful with this. So I'm going to see if I can get this out. Okay, so the way that I got this undone is I go in the middle here, and there's a little tabbed piece, so I can put that down to put that tab down, and then it will release. And then there's also a piece on the bottom, which I'll show you here. So that fits all the way in, and then again, you can see that little piece there fits in one of those grooves, so that way you can adjust this in and out depending on how wide your roll is. That's not going to change for us, but I just wanted to let people know in case their roll is a little too tight, that can be removed. Do not lose this piece. Just set it aside until you get new paper or whatever, so that way it doesn't get lost. But just another thing I wanted to point out on this printer that can help operations. On both printers, you're going to have these ports. Okay, so this is the newer one, the 330. This is the 300. The only difference between the two is this one has a USB Type B ports. This is basically like a PCI card, which means it's removable. That's these two screws here. And you can take this whole card out and put a different type of port in there if it's compatible with this printer. We order these with what's called a parallel serial port, or a 25 pin. Not all these pins are used, but that's the data that communicates to the register. USB we don't use. This sometimes, it looks like a phone cable. We don't use this either, but on some systems the cash drawer will plug into that, and it will release the cash drawer when a printer is made, and it triggers it to release. But that's not on our system, so we don't need to worry about it. The only other cable we use here is the power. You can see it's 24 volts. And that DK is for drawer kick. And then, yeah, it says serial here on the card itself. So this whole piece comes out, like I said. Same thing is true here. I don't know if that says serial. It might say, yeah, it does. Okay. Then you have the drawer kick and the 24 volt as well. But anyway, like I said, we don't use anything other than the serial port and the power. And then if you look on the back of the register, well, I'll get to that in a second here. Let me get to that register here. Hold on. Okay, so this is the back of the C18. If I take that PCI cover off, you can see that you have all your ports. These are all the peripherals. Right here, we have the printer, which goes into COM 4. This is a little different than Ruby 2. The Ruby 2 has 8 ports, the C18 only has 6. The printer is COM 4 on both of them. The scanner is different though, because the scanner on a Ruby 2 goes to port 8. Since there is no port 8 on a C18, this goes to port 2 instead. We don't use port 2 on a Ruby 2, so that doesn't make any difference as far as swapping connections. The other one that we may use on here is COM 3 for the pole display. And then COM 6 for a coin changer if there's one in place. That's here. So the pole display, the one difference on the C18 here, I'm going to flip this. Well, actually we'll get to that soon, but I wanted to continue here. So these two power supplies here on the register, same as the Ruby 2. I'm just going to unplug them so you can see. you have printer power and you have DC power. So they both look the same. As you can see, they can get mixed up. So make sure that when you're plugging in one to the other, you can see what's supposed to go to where. Not always are these labeled, but typically, if you look at the two that are two plugs here, yeah, there we go. Okay, so the thinner cable goes to this here, this power brick, and I have it labeled C18 Reg 4. As the power brick, as you know, can be unplugged there. So that is your power. That's always the thinner of the two. And that goes into the DC power. So I want to make sure this flat portion here, if I rotate this around, you can see it's curved. On a C18, the flat portion always goes face up. And then that will snap into place. You can see that light comes on right away. And then the same thing for printer power. And I will show how those ports look when they're plugged into the printer, but I'm gonna plug that in. Plugging it in here basically says the register is gonna supply power to the printer rather than a power brick or something like this. You can do it either way, but that just kind of creates a little bit more convenience, so you need one less outlet. The cash drawer typically, like same thing here, we use port 1, port 2 isn't enabled. So, and then also you can use, in a pinch, if your touchscreen doesn't work, you have these USB ports. You can plug in a USB mouse here, and that will, you can operate it like a computer and use your mouse to navigate on the screen if the touchscreen's not responding properly most of the time. We'll kind of use that as a short-term fix if needed. All right, so I'm gonna pause this and we'll go to the back of the printer as far as how the data cable here, which is port 4, and the power right here, the thicker cable, how those plug into the printer itself. Okay, so this is a live printer here, just to show how these are connected. That is the other side of COM 4. That's your 25 pin ports that I showed earlier. And this is a 330, so it's got that USB port that we don't use and the cache drawer that we don't use, as I said. And then that's the other end of the thicker cable that goes to the back of the register. You could use the same kind of power brick like this and plug it into there directly if you want. Sometimes we do that. So as long as power is supplied to the printer, it doesn't matter whether it comes to the register or a brick, it's the same amount. So anyway, we'll flip this back, and there's a couple more things that I wanted to show with this. If I can get, well, I'll show you on this one. So on the side here, this is a 330, same deal. So on the side here, you have this toggle switch, and on the front, you have these 3 indicator lights. You have power, error, paper, and the feed button. That's broke. Typically, you'll see something like this where there's kind of a plastic cover. It still works the same way. This happens a lot. And you can see here, this has got power. There is no error, and paper is in there. So if I pop this open, you can see how that's fed. That little spacer piece is all the way to the side. And when I zoom in here, that's saying error because my door's open. It's not going to print. So if I zoom, oh, well, you can see how the paper is fed there. It's like this. So again, this is thermal paper, just like the gas monitors or the backup credits or receipt printers on the pumps. Same deal. So I'm going to shut that. That will turn that error off. But what I wanted to demonstrate here, I'm going to zoom out, is if I turn this off, I just hit the toggle switch so you can see that power's off. There we go. Okay, so if I hold the feed button down and then turn it on, you can see everything lights up, but then it's going to print this report. And then once I let go, it just does kind of a diagnostic for banding, just to make sure that all your characters print properly and there's no issues with, you know, something being impeding the print head. But I want to bring this over here. Okay, so we're going to look at this report. So this will show you just kind of basically what everything's set at. So as long as these settings match what's on the register, then it's going to work properly. The biggest one here is that baud rate, and then the data bits and parity. And as long as those all match, as far as what we do in the device control, I believe it is, those settings, And again, you're not going to be able to see the 38 or 38400 for the baud rate unless you try to change it, then it'll be visible. But yeah, just to make sure all those match, this should be working properly as long as you got your data and your power going to it. You can change stuff using these, and this is by, once you hit that power on, once you've been holding the feed button down, then you do short clicks on this. But typically you're not going to have to mess with that. That's only going to be IT people. But that's how baud rate is changed on this, is by using that. I'm not going to be able to demonstrate it here, but these two printers are the only ones that will do barcodes. So if you have a suspended sale or something on, well, not a suspended sale, but a self-checkout where something isn't working properly, it needs to be brought to a manned register. You can do that. Well, it'll print out a receipt and it'll have a barcode at the bottom, so that way you can bring that receipt to a manned register and just scan it, and it'll bring up all the items that you rang up on the self-checkout, just to save time. The same thing is true with I-orders. We have to use these types of printers on I-orders because they print barcodes. The previous ones we had, the Epson TM88, 4, 5, and I think 6, they will work as long as you have these settings as well, but they will not print a barcode. So there's some firmware issue that Verifone put in these two printers that Epson does not have to prevent buying Epsons going forward. So Verifone wants you to buy their stuff. If you don't need barcodes, it's not an issue, but I will say that it prints a little choppier and slower. I'm not sure if that's because of the baud rate. If that's can be changed and it will print better, but it's just not as smooth. It does work properly though. So I can demonstrate that barcode when I go to one of those sites. Okay, so this is self-checkout in Hickman. I activated this just to show the barcode issue. So if I take a standard product here, scan it, now I have that's listed here like it normally would be. But then if I took an age-restricted item like this fireball shooter and scan it, then this pops up. It says it's an age-restricted item. You can call the cashier so they can enter in birth date or whatever, or I can just hit pay at the counter. So if I do that, then hit this done, then that receipt prints. And I take this and you can see that I have a barcode on, whoop. Okay, you can see that I have a barcode on it. And it does not have the fireball, because that way when they take it to the counter, they scan that barcode and that will ring up all the previous items that we were going to bring over to the manned register, and then that way they can take this fireball, bring that up, and then scan the ID, enter in the birth date, whatever they need to do to fix this. So what I wanted to demonstrate is if they take this barcode over to a manned register. So here we're on a manned register. Here's our scanner. I'm going to take this barcode, scan that, and you can see that it throws up what was already scanned in on the self-checkout, and then you can just continue on with the transaction as you were there. So it just saves a little bit of time. And that's really all I wanted to show with that. That also has that receipt pending. Oh yeah, it is. So that was suspended. What I rang up on the self-checkout. So that reason that message is there is because of that being transferred from the self-checkout to a manned register.